Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born on November 30, 1874, at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, England, into the distinguished Marlborough family, a lineage of soldiers and statesmen that deeply influenced his identity. His childhood was marked by a lack of parental attention, as his father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a distant figure, and his American mother, Jenny Jerome, was often preoccupied with social life. Yet young Winston found solace in reading, military adventures, and his growing fascination with history. Educated at Harrow and later the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, he pursued a career in the army, serving in Cuba, India, the Sudan, and South Africa, where his daring escape from Boer captivity made him a national hero and gave him his first taste of fame. He quickly turned to politics, becoming a member of Parliament in 1900 and gaining attention for his sharp wit, fearless opinions, and controversial party switches between the Conservatives and Liberals, showing that his loyalty was to his own vision rather than strict party lines. Throughout his early political life, he served in various government posts, including Home Secretary and First Lord of the Admiralty during World War I, where he championed the use of new technologies, like tanks, but also bore responsibility for the disastrous Gallipoli campaign, a failure that temporarily ruined his reputation. Despite setbacks, his resilience drove him back into the political arena, and by the 1930s, he became one of the few voices warning Britain about the growing threat of Nazi Germany, a position that was ignored by many at the time, but later proved prophetic. When war finally broke out in 1939, Churchill returned to government as First Lord of the Admiralty, and after Neville Chamberlain's resignation in May 1940, became Prime Minister at Britain's most desperate hour. His leadership during the Battle of Britain, when the Royal Air Force fought off Hitler's Luftwaffe, and his refusal to consider surrender made him a beacon of hope, not only for Britain but for the world. His stirring speeches, filled with defiance and eloquence, gave ordinary citizens courage to endure bombings, shortages, and loss, while his diplomacy strengthened Britain's alliances with the United States and the Soviet Union, creating the foundation of the Allied victory. Beyond the battlefield, Churchill was deeply involved in strategic planning, meeting with Roosevelt and Stalin in historic conferences that shaped the outcome of the war and the post-war world order. After the war, however, he lost the 1945 election, as the British people longed for social change, yet he returned to power in 1951, showing his enduring influence. In addition to politics, Churchill was a man of many talents. He wrote extensively, producing monumental works of history, such as the Second World War and a history of the English-speaking peoples, which secured him the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. An honor that recognized the power of his words as much as his deeds. He was also a passionate painter, finding peace in art as a way to escape the stress of politics, and his canvases reveal a softer, reflective side of his otherwise combative personality. In his later years, Churchill became a symbol of resilience for the free world, famously coining the term Iron Curtain to describe Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and warning of the dangers of communism at the start of the Cold War. His declining health eventually forced him to retire in 1955, but by then he had secured his place as one of history's greatest leaders. He passed away on January 24, 1965, and was given a state funeral attended by world leaders, a tribute to the monumental role he played in shaping modern history. Today, Churchill is remembered as a paradoxical figure, at once a stubborn imperialist and a visionary defender of freedom, a man with deep flaws yet towering achievements, whose words, decisions, and unshakable willpower turned him into a global icon of leadership during one of humanity's darkest and most decisive eras. Military career and early fame: 1895 to 1900, served in Cuba, India, Sudan, and South Africa, gained fame as a war correspondent, escaped from Boer captivity in South Africa, which made him a national hero. Political rise and setbacks: 1900s to 1930s. Elected to Parliament in 1900 as a Conservative, later switched to the Liberal Party. Held key posts: Home Secretary and First Lord of the Admiralty. Supported military innovation like tanks. Gallipoli campaign failed badly, damaging his career. 1920s-30s, out of power for years, warning against Nazi Germany when most ignored him. The Wilderness Years. World War II leadership 1939–1945, returned as First Lord of the Admiralty in 1939, became Prime Minister in May 1940 after Chamberlain resigned, famous for speeches, "We shall fight on the beaches and never in the field of human conflict," led Britain during the Battle of Britain, refusing to surrender, built alliances with Roosevelt, USA and Stalin, USSR, shaping the Allied war effort, played a central role in planning D-Day and Allied victory, post-war life and second term, 1945–1955, 1955 election. Despite war victory, people wanted social reform, returned as Prime Minister in 1951, famous for warning about the Iron Curtain and the dangers of Soviet expansion at the start of the Cold War. Retired in 1955 due to poor health. Personal achievements: prolific writer and historian, authored multi-volume works, won the Nobel Prize in Literature, 19. Intellectual depth and oratory genius. Churchill's intellect was shaped by a voracious reading habit and a remarkable memory. Though not academically exceptional in school, he had an extraordinary command of the English language and an instinctive sense for drama and timing, skills that turned him into one of the most compelling public speakers in history. His speeches weren't spontaneous improvisations. They were often carefully drafted, revised and rehearsed, blending classical references, biblical cadences, and sheer emotional force. Phrases like "their finest hour" or "the end of the beginning" endure because they struck a precise emotional chord at moments of crisis. Literary legacy beyond politics. Churchill's literary career extended far beyond war memoirs. His output included biographies, political philosophy, and essays, including works on his ancestor the Duke of Marlborough and studies of the British Empire. Despite his aristocratic
background, Churchill wrote with clarity and accessibility, aiming to reach a wide audience. His Nobel Prize in Literature was awarded not just for his books, but for brilliant oratory in defending exalted human values. Few world leaders have combined political and literary talents so seamlessly. Art as solace. Churchill took up painting in his 40s, encouraged by his sister-in-law. It became a source of great personal therapy, especially during times of political defeat or
emotional turmoil. He produced over 500 canvases, mostly landscapes and still lifes. Though he never claimed to be a professional artist, his works were displayed in exhibitions, sometimes under a pseudonym, and some are now held in galleries and museums. Painting allowed him to escape the burden of decision-making and served as a rare, peaceful retreat from a turbulent life. Controversies and criticism. Churchill's legacy is not without deep controversy. While widely admired for his wartime
leadership, his views on empire, race and colonialism have drawn increasing scrutiny. He staunchly opposed Indian independence, famously saying he did not want to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire. His role in the Bengal famine of 1943, during which millions died, remains one of the darkest chapters of his record. Though wartime pressures complicated supply chains, Churchill's dismissive attitude toward Indian suffering is often cited as evidence of imperialist. Deeper insights into Winston Churchill's life. Here are some lesser-known aspects that enrich our understanding of Churchill beyond the usual biography. Influence of Mrs. Everest. Churchill's beloved nanny, Elizabeth Everest, played a pivotal role in his early life. Raised under her care due to emotionally distant parents, Churchill later described her as "my dearest and most intimate friend" during childhood. Wikipedia +1. Early educational struggles and triumphs. Despite his later brilliance, Churchill struggled academically, especially in mathematics, initially failing the entrance exam for Sandhurst. With the dedicated help of his Harrow tutor, Mr. Charles Mayo, he accomplished a remarkable fourfold improvement, ultimately securing his place at the military academy The Times. 3. Speech impediment turned trademark. Contrary to popular belief, Churchill was neither dyslexic nor did he stutter. However, he had a slight lisp that made the pronunciation of S challenging. Far from a disadvantage, he transformed it into an integral facet of his oratory style. International Churchill Society. 4. Burst of creative passion during hardship. Painting became a lifeline for Churchill during the low ebb of his career following the Gallipoli mishap. Encouraged by his sister-in-law, he picked up a brush in 1915 and discovered a lifelong passion for art. Eventually, he produced over 500 paintings, landscapes, still lifes and scenes from his properties. Many created under pseudonyms like Charles Morin, Wikipedia, Royal Mint, Medium. 5. Valued art collection and Monet. Among Churchill's personal treasures was a gift he adored, Monet's 1902 painting of the Palace of Westminster, presented in 1949 by literary agent Emery Revs. This artwork offered both comfort and artistic inspiration during a turbulent post-war period. Diverse and unusual hobbies. Churchill's creative spirit extended far beyond painting. He built garden walls, tiled cottages, and even a swimming pool at his home in Chartwell. He bought farmland in 1946, indulged in butterfly breeding, and followed horse racing passionately, owning thoroughbreds and joining the Jockey Club in 1950, captivating history. He also explored futuristic ideas, writing essays on evolution, fusion power, and even entertaining musings on extraterrestrial life. Advocate for innovation and covert warfare, a forward thinker, Churchill championed the development of radar technology in the 1930s, a key advantage during the Battle of Britain, the places where we go. He also established the Special Operations Executive in 1940, spearheading espionage and resistance efforts across occupied Europe, the places where we go. Crust of remarkable parliamentary longevity. Churchill's political career spanned nearly 55 years and 6 monarchs from Queen Victoria to Queen Elizabeth II. He served as Prime Minister twice, 1940-45 and 1951-55, becoming the only British Prime Minister to win the Nobel Prize in Literature Royal Mint in Encyclopædia Britannica. 9. Unexpected chart-topping political figure. After his death, Churchill's recorded speeches made it onto the UK music charts, with collections like The Voice of and Reach for the Skies, marking a unique posthumous musical legacy, enriched by writing. From writing about military campaigns like the River War and the story of the Malacan Field Force, to crafting monumental histories including his 6-volume The Second World War, Churchill's literary output was both prolific and influential, mourning and global respect. News of his death prompted an extraordinary outpouring of grief worldwide. Queen Elizabeth II sent a heartfelt condolence to Lady Churchill. US President Lyndon B. Johnson ordered American flags flown at half-staff, the first time this was done for a foreign leader. Other international tributes poured in from heads of state, including Charles de Gaulle, Soviet Premier Kosygin, and former US Presidents Truman and Eisenhower. Wikipedia Politico. Lying in state. Churchill lay in state at Westminster Hall for 3 days. During that period, over 300,000 people queued to pay their respects, moving past his coffin in solemn silence. State funeral and grand ceremony. On 30 January 1965, his state funeral was held at St. Paul's Cathedral. Run round. It was the first state funeral for a non-royal since William Gladstone in 1898, and the largest such ceremony of the century. The Times Politico. Wikipedia. The BBC broadcast the ceremony live, deploying 30